The notification chimed with a sterile corporate ping, a sound that usually meant a calendar update or a completed deployment. It was 4:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. The pale Seattle rain streaked my office window, turning the city below into a watercolor of grays. I was finalizing a security patch for our flagship platform, a patch that would protect the data of over 2 million patients in a hospital network we served. My fingers flew across the keyboard, deep in the flow. The world narrowed to lines of elegant code. I clicked open the email from my sister, Sabrina, expecting a query about the next day's board meeting agenda. Your services are no longer required. Severance details to follow. I blinked, read it again. The words didn't change. They just sat there, black and final on the bright screen. Your services, as if I were a malfunctioning printer or an expired software license. Not her sister, not the co-founder who coded the first prototype on a second-hand laptop in her damp apartment, not the architect who had spent 8 years breathing life into her vision, turning it into a $6.8 million a year fortress. A hollow, airless silence filled my ears, drowning out the hum of the servers. My gaze drifted, mechanically, through the glass wall of my office. Across the open-plan floor, in Sabrina's corner suite with its panoramic view of the Sound, she stood with our cousin, Talia. They were laughing. Talia, marker in hand, was drawing sweeping, empty shapes on a whiteboard. Sabrina nodded, clapping her on the back. A celebratory pose. They weren't just planning a future, they were erasing mine. A coldness, sharper than any winter wind off Puget Sound, flooded my veins. It wasn't heat or rage, it was the absolute zero of betrayal. It crystallized everything. The missed birthdays, the deferred dreams, the relationship that had withered because I was always here, married to this code, to her dream. All for this, a 2-sentence execution. My hand, steady as a surgeon's, moved the mouse. I hit forward. I typed my lawyer's email address. In the subject line, I wrote, "Urgent, termination and next steps." I added only 2 words of my own to the body. As discussed. We had discussed no such thing, but the message was clear. The war room was now open. I leaned back, the ergonomic chair groaning. A ghost of a smile touched my lips, but it held no warmth. For 8 years, I had been the silent, beating heart of Prescott Cybersecurity. Now they'd just decided to operate on themselves, and I was the only one who knew where all the arteries were buried. The specter in the code. The betrayal had a name, and it wasn't just Sabrina. It was Talia. Talia, with her STANFORD MBA, bought, not earned, and the strategic depth of a puddle. She'd swanned in 2 years ago, a vortex of buzzwords and borrowed prestige, synergy, disruption, leveraging the ecosystem. She called our meticulously crafted architecture spaghetti code, and once asked me in all seriousness if the firewall was a physical wall we could paint the company logo on. Yet she was the face. I was the back end, a grunt in the engine room while she captained the ship from the sun deck, taking credit for every port we reached. I remembered the hospital deal, the $2.3 million contract that had been my crucible. Months of my life, 80-hour weeks, a labyrinth of HIPAA compliance I'd navigated while surviving on cold coffee and adrenaline. In the final pitch, Talia had arrived late, smelling of expensive perfume, and proclaimed herself the architect of this partnership. When the hospital's grizzled CISO drilled down on technical specifics, her smile had frozen, her eyes darting to me like searchlights seeking a lifeline. Afterwards, in the kitchen, she'd cornered me. "You humiliated me in there," she hissed, her manicured finger an inch from my chest. "You're just the builder. I'm the visionary. Next time, pass me a note. Know your place. And Sabrina, my own sister? She'd chosen blindness. She'd chosen the flattering lie over the hard truth. When I'd brought her a spreadsheet, a week of my life meticulously documenting Talia's fake client meetings, her phantom leads, Sabrina had sighed, pushing it away. Arya, you're too technical. This is just how business development works. You have to be aggressive. Aggressive, not fraudulent, not a liability, just aggressive. So I had prepared, not out of spite, but out of the same instinct that made me back up a server. I'd compiled a shadow ledger, not of money, but of truth. Security protocols Sabrina had waived to cut costs. The offshore development team, a glorified sweatshop, Talia had hired against my explicit warnings, who'd been given startling levels of access. Every shortcut, every compromise, every time the bottom line was valued over the integrity of the very walls we were paid to defend, it was all there, encrypted and waiting. They thought they were firing an employee. They were amputating their own central nervous system and expecting to walk away unscathed. The unraveling. My withdrawal wasn't emotional, it was a strategic retreat. I invoked Clause 7B of our operating agreement, the dry legalese passage about minority shareholder rights and seed capital withdrawal. My $150,000, our grandfather's legacy, my leap of faith, wasn't a gift, it was an investment, and the investment was now toxic. I spent that first night not crying, but archiving. Every repository, every commit log, every architecture decision. It was an archaeological dig of my own past. As I worked, Talia's text flashed on my screen. We both know Sabrina's been carrying you for years. Time for some real innovation. Try not to be too bitter about your spaghetti code. I took a screenshot. Asset number 347. Evidence of hostile intent. I felt nothing but a chilling focus. For 6 days, I watched the dominoes fall from a distance. My silence was a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. Their panic rushed in to fill it. Day 1, corporate calm. Arya, need the AWS master key rotation schedule. Please advise. Day 3, the veneer cracked. Voicemails. The deployment pipeline is failing. The clients are calling. What did you do? Day 5, familial artillery. My Aunt Monica, her voice a symphony of melodramatic worry. Arya, baby, what is happening? Sabrina is beside herself. You're tearing this family apart. My mother, softer, sadder. Please, just talk to her. Day 6, the fatal overreach. The system alert was a masterpiece of irony. They had attempted a full, unauthorized migration of the core codebase to a new private repository, a digital coup. They failed. The authorization gate, a complex, multi-key cryptographic protocol I designed after the near breach, had stopped them cold. They'd tried to erase me, and my own ghost in the machine had slapped their hand away. That was the line. Not the firing, not the insults, the attempted oblivion. I picked up my phone, the final piece of the weapon in my hand. Execute Phase 3, I told my lawyer, and send the package to Dr. Malik at Northwest General, the hospital CISO, the man who valued security over spin. The reckoning. What followed wasn't an attack, it was the inevitable consequence of gravity. I didn't push their empire over the cliff. I simply reminded everyone that they'd built it on the edge. The code freeze was the first symptom. With a flick of a legal switch, every development branch locked. No features, no bug fixes. The platform became a statue. Client dashboards froze, automated reports stalled. The heart of the business flatlined. The investor brief went out next, a cold, factual document outlining potential fiduciary breaches and the unprecedented security risks posed by the leadership transition. I didn't need to accuse, I just presented the data. The silence from the board was deafening. The meeting at Sabrina's pristine condo was a farce painted in minimalist decor. Talia held court on a white Italian sofa, scrolling through Instagram. "It's a temporary setback," she declared to the room, as if we were the audience. "I have contacts at Google who can rebuild in a month. Arya's work was always fragile." Sabrina stood by the window, the city lights doing nothing to illuminate the hollows under her eyes. "You've sabotaged us," she said, but the accusation had no fire, only ashes. "I protected my work from theft," I corrected, my voice calm in the storm of their distress. "You tried to steal my legacy and give it to her. The freeze is a symptom. The disease is your judgment." "You'll ruin us," Sabrina shouted, the facade finally crumbling. "No," I said, standing to leave. "I'm just calling the coroner." Their lawsuit was a final, desperate convulsion. They claimed sabotage, theft, emotional distress. It was a gift. Discovery would be a public autopsy. The rot exposed. The truth, when it finally broke surface, didn't come from me. It came from Jared, my lead engineer, who met me in the rain under the Fremont Bridge. He looked haunted. "They're going to bury me with them," he said, his voice raw. "Talia, for months, she's been forcing efficiencies. She disabled log audits. She pushed API integrations without review. There's exposed data, patient data." Sabrina knew. Not the extent, but she knew Talia was cutting corners, and she let it happen to hit growth targets. He pressed a flash drive into my palm. It was warm from his grip. "It's all there. Access logs, configuration errors, the reports I filed that were marked resolved without being read. It's not just incompetence, Arya. It's gross negligence. It's evil." The files were a descent into a ninth circle of hell, crafted not by malice, but by staggering, arrogant ignorance. Clinical trial data, accessible via an unsecured test server. Financial records, left in a cloud bucket with public permissions for convenience. Every safeguard I'd painstakingly built, dismantled for speed, for a prettier quarterly slide. In the courtroom, the air was thin and cold. Sabrina sat alone at her table. Talia was unreachable on the West Coast. Our lawyer presented the flash drive evidence not as a weapon, but as a solemn duty. The judge's face grew stony. Sabrina's lawsuit didn't just dissolve, it was incinerated under the heat of this new, horrifying reality. The court mandated a federal-level security audit. It was a death sentence. Outside, in the marble hallway, Sabrina looked small. The powerful CEO was gone, replaced by a lost woman. "I didn't know it was that bad," she whispered, a broken record of denial. I stopped, turning to face her fully. "That's the tragedy, Sabrina. You didn't want to know, because knowing would mean admitting you betrayed your company, your clients, and your sister for a lie in a pencil skirt." I walked away. The click of my heels on the marble was the only sound, the final period on the sentence. Aftermath, ashes, and new growth. The collapse was spectacular, total, and quiet. Prescott's cybersecurity didn't explode, it dissolved like sugar in rain. Clients terminated contracts, the office lease was forfeited, the brand became a cautionary tale whispered in industry circles. Sabrina moved to a one-bedroom in Ballard. I heard through my mother she's taking coding boot camps, an humbling attempt to understand the world she once ruled. I sent money for rent, not for her, but for my mother's peace of mind. Talia, I heard, landed a strategic advisory role at a blockchain startup in Palo Alto. The cycle repeats. And me? I am in Vancouver. My office has a view of the North Shore Mountains, not a downtown skyline. The air smells of salt and pine, not recycled ambition. My new firm, Aegis Dynamics, has 3 employees, myself and 2 brilliant engineers who followed me from the wreckage. We work sane hours. We build flawless systems. We say no to bad ideas. There is no family here, only respect, only craft. The final call from Sabrina came on a clear autumn morning. Her voice was stripped bare of all its former power. "We have nothing, Arya. We need you. I need my sister. We can rebuild something real." I looked out my window at the resilient, evergreen coast. I felt the solid, unshakable ground of my own integrity beneath me. "You can't rebuild on a foundation of lies, Sabrina," I said, my voice gentle but unyielding. "You have to start from scratch." And so did I. I hung up. There was no triumph, only the profound, quiet certainty of a storm that has finally passed. They had mistaken my loyalty for weakness, my silence for compliance. Their revenge was a fleeting, petty power play. Mine was a permanent state of freedom. And that, my friends, is the most devastating revenge of all. If this story of silent strength and seismic consequences resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated and dreamed of the moment the world sees your true value, then you belong here. Don't just watch. Subscribe to Clara's Revenge. Hit that notification bell, because every single week we journey into the heart of betrayal and back out again with stories of breathtaking redemption and cunning justice. Your support fuels this channel. Subscribe now and join a community that believes in settling the score.